Hi everyone, it's Pete here. Now this is part one of my build and modifications on the Tamiya Lunchbox. Now I would say this is more about the modifications than it is about the steps of the standard build, because you can find that elsewhere on YouTube. This time we'll be doing the 5th shock mod amongst other things. So without further ado, let's go back to the past when I'm just starting to build the kit. Oh look, a nice new Lunchbox kit that I haven't opened yet, so let's start building it. Okay, my first top tip is when you're doing stage 2 here and you put the BC2 M2 little screws there into the ball connectors there. Try not to over tighten them because these do snap fairly easily, so just to stop them coming out, put a little spot of glue on and do them up with moderate tightness rather than going mad with tightening them up. Okay, that should do it, and hopefully that won't come out. Okay, if you did over tighten and break one of these, then you could use one of these if you've got them spare in your parts box, because that's an M3 thread and it's a bit stronger. Just put a drill through with a 3mm drill and stick a nut on the back, and that would be a solution to that without getting any more spare parts, but hopefully you haven't broken it in the first place. Okay, next thing I was going to say was just make sure you've got a good fit for the screw that screws the servo horn onto the servo, because you need a decent amount of thread coming through the back and it needs to be a good fit in whatever servo you've got. So just try the different ones that they give you and see what's the best fit. And also on this as well, I'd stick a little spot of super glue just on the end of the screw, just to help it to stay in there, because it does take a bit of a hammer in this, so you don't want it to come out. So yeah, just do that now. Okay, I've already centralised the servo, so let's just check that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, the next thing is to work out where the electrics are going to go. So in the instructions they put the speed controller up here. I've got this brushless Absima one, and I found a better position for it is to put it sort of down in here and tape it on there. Then the motor is on that side and the battery's on that side, and then the switch can go in down here, so the wires all reach. So that's what I'm going to do. But also what I'm going to do is put a couple of holes either side before I do that, and then I'm going to put a cable tie around it, because that sort of just holds it in better, because this tape is pretty good, but it can come loose after it's been underwater and shaken about a lot. So yeah, I'll just get on and do that. Okay, so I've drilled a couple of holes either side and I've stuck the speed controller in with the tape that came with it, so it's going to get a cable tie around it. So if I just go in from the back through the hole that I've done, bring that around there. So just bring it across there, and the other side. Make sure I haven't snagged any of the wires. So it comes out of the back there, and just need the other cable tie. And which way? That way. On there, then just cut off the extras. And job's a good one. Okay, I'm just going to do some prep for the 5th shock mod. So this is the underside of the back of the chassis. I've put these bits on temporarily. I just want to do a test fit of this spring just to check where I've got to make the holes. So this bar is the one that goes through the front of the gearbox there, and it needs to run up and down in those channels. And so that spring is a good size. It's 80mm between the middles of the holes, and that works out just fine, and it can allow that to move up and down in there. So all you need to do is just to work out where the hole's got to go in that there. What I've got on here is one of these little brackets. Now you'll have these spare if you're not upgrading to oil shocks on the rest of the car, but if you have used those already you need to get another one. And this is an Absima shock. It's yeah, so it's the right length. You're probably better with the Tamiya one because I've used the Tamiya end here because it's better for going through the bar there. But anyways, this needs to be in the middle of that, and so it doesn't catch on the back of the chassis. So just sort of make a mark where that is, and then you can drill a hole. Okay, so the shock's attached to the spring mount, which is attached to the chassis. So now what we've got to do is make a hole in the front part of the gearbox here. So I just made a mark halfway across. I'm going to drill through with a 5mm drill and then file it out until there's big enough space to get that through there, and then the bar can come through and go through the end of the shock there. So I'll just do that now. Okay, so I've made that slot in there, so once I've built the gearbox I can put the bar through there and through the bottom of the shock, and that should work like that. Okay, so I'm going to build the gearbox now. The only thing I'd say with the gearbox is I'm using the ball bearings, and if you're using the ball bearings then there's a lot of things in the instructions that it tells you to grease that you don't really need to. So all you need to grease is the gear teeth. Things like the drive shaft will be running on the bearings, so they don't need any more grease. So I'll just get on with that. Okay, having said about not needing to grease anything else apart from the gear teeth, these little shafts that go through the bevel gears could do with a little bit of grease because there's no bearing on that. So there's that, and also I just thought, don't worry that there's sometimes things left over. This gear here isn't used in this kit, but it is in the bag, so I think it's a standard gear bag. I'm not sure what kit uses that, but yeah, don't worry about that, you don't need it. Okay, so instead of the standard motor here, I'm going to be using this brushless one. This one's an Absima motor, part of a set. The good thing about this is the wires go up, which is useful for the Lunchbox because they don't come out and catch on the tyres. So otherwise you need to strap the wires back onto the body there like you do with the standard motor. One thing you've got to watch out for is the fact that the standard motor's got a bump here and this hasn't, so you just need to test where the pinion's got to go, and it's about 4mm above the body of the motor, and you can check it by putting the spacer on and test fitting it up against the gear. So leave that cover off the gears there, put that in, and then you can look inside and run your nail over it and just see if it's meshing properly with the other gear. And once you've got it in the right place, put a bit of thread lock on and the job's done. Okay, once I've found the position for the pinion gear, I put a little bit of thread lock on the grub screws just to make sure it doesn't come out, because the those little grub screws come loose, and it's a bit of a pain if that happens when you're out and about. One thing I would say about this stuff is just make sure that you don't get on any of the plastic parts, because it will dissolve them, and I found that to my cost, so beware. Okay, one little mod you can do just before putting the wheelie bar on is to put a couple of cable ties around the end of the bar there and through that hole. And what that does, when it's on the gearbox there, it protects the back of the gearbox from that sharp corner there, because this does work loose and it does start making a hole in there, so that saves it. Another thing that you could do, I've seen a mod where people run a bar in between that screw on the end and there. So that's another thing. I haven't done that myself, but it looks like it's quite good. So yeah, up to you, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, so that's on and it's all working really well. Just to point out, if you have done the 5th shock mod, then you don't need the little springs that they give you that go in the sides there. So you can miss out step 11 and just move straight on to step number 12. Okay, so we need to put on the rear suspension. Now, if you're using the standard suspension from the kit, the only tip I've got really is that if you build it as they say, then that knocks on the chassis and it's quite annoying. So if you use a little bit of this rubber tube that they give you for the lower part of the shock and put it on the top there, then that will make far less noise when it knocks on the chassis. Now, Shen RC did a mod on his channel, which you can look up, where he's put the rubber tube so it's actually glued to the chassis, and then the pin sort of slides through it, so it gives a bit of a damping effect. So it's up to you. When I had the standard suspension on my other Lunchbox, I just did that one. But for this, I'm going to be using the oil shocks, so let's just get those now. Okay, so I'm going to be using this, which is the Tamiya Short Shock Set 2. Now, I recommend these Tamiya shocks for the Tamiya cars because they fit, and also the damping rate and the springs are suitable for the cars that they're going on, because you can go on eBay and see cheap shocks and aluminium shocks, and I haven't had much luck with them really myself. They always seem to have springs that are too hard or damping forces that are too hard, so they haven't really been a good buy in the end. So these ones are good. You get parts so you can make different lengths of shock, so they fit different kits. Yeah, just as an example, this shock that I was using for the 5th shock mod, it's an Absima one, and the spring that came with it was way too hard really for these light cars, so I've actually put a Tamiya spring on it just to make it a bit softer. So yeah, that's what I'm using, so let's build them up. Okay, so I'm going to build the shocks now. My only tip really is just check the back of the box to see which length you need for the Lunchbox. It's the 80mm shocks. So if you check the instructions inside, it tells you need the X3 spacer for that and the short shock end. So just remember to put the right bits on. And some only other tip other than that is when you put the O-rings in there, is just to put a little bit of oil in here just to help with the seal. But apart from that, I'm just building it as per the instructions, so I'll just get on with that now. Okay, I just put the springs on and I'm just sort of testing things out, and what I've noticed is that the gearbox is able to sort of push against the 5th shock there a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of the rubber piping on that you would put with the standard springs. I think just about 10mm on the shock shaft there will just stop these going too far but still allow enough suspension travel. So yeah, I'll just do that now and test it again. Okay, so I just put the bits of rubber tubing in at the bottoms of the shocks there, so now it'll not squash the 5th shock, but it still allows plenty of articulation of the axle there. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, that's it for part 1. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.